I'm a 16-year-old male, and this story is about a scary experience that I had one weekend at an abandoned house. I was with my two best friends at the time, Delaney and Julia. We were home alone and bored at Delaney's house with nothing to do. I can't remember whose idea was, but one of us suggested that we drive around the old dirt roads and check out abandoned buildings. There were a lot of abandoned places around where we lived. It was pretty far out in the country, surrounded by either farms or woods. We went to two old tobacco houses, took a few pictures and just sort of goofed off. We got back on the road and saw an old unkempt driveway. Keep in mind that hardly anyone lived on this road. We decided to drive down the driveway, despite Julia saying that we shouldn't because it didn't feel right to her. She wasn't concerned about trespassing or anything. She just sensed some bad vibes in that place. However, Delaney and I insisted that we check it out. We took the turn onto the driveway and it went pretty far back into the woods. It wasn't long before weird things started to happen. We parked the truck in a little clearing and noticed an abandoned house off in the distance. However, before we got out of the truck, the front sensor went off, beeping like crazy. Then so did the back one. It was as if somebody had walked around the truck. The weird thing about this was that we were parked in a clearing and there was nothing to make the sensors go off. Even if there was, they would have gone off before we parked and it wouldn't have just gone off randomly in that order. Delaney and Julia were kind of freaked out, but I just ignored it. It wasn't until later that this would freak me out too. We all got out of the truck and started walking towards the house. I was in front and my friends were walking a distance behind me. To be honest, I was just showing off by trying to act fearless. I wasn't scared, though, until I saw her. It looked like a woman. A woman with dingy, unkempt hair and a colonial-style dress, looking around the corner of the house. She looked at me and just put her finger up to her lips and shushed me very loudly. The feeling I had is almost indescribable. Imagine, as if all sense of safety and protection is gone and you don't feel at all happy. My heart felt like it stopped. I started crying because I was so scared. I turned around to my friends and screamed for them to run. We all started sprinting back to the truck. My phone flew out of my pocket when we were around. Halfway back, Julia noticed and told me. Then I told her to leave it. If you know me, you'd know that I wouldn't ditch my phone unless it was serious. Julia and Delaney got back into the truck and we tried to open it, but it was locked. Delaney reached for her keys, but they were gone and so was Julia's phone. It's as if whoever that woman was, she was trying to keep us there. Delaney ran back and picked up Julia's phone and mine. Then she found her keys. We got in the truck and floored it out of there, back to Delaney's house. Later at the house, we were all talking about the situation and I was explaining what I had seen. My friends didn't even hear the shush, nor did they see the woman. I was afraid that they wouldn't believe me, but Julia reassured me that she did. The look on my face and the tears were proof enough to her that we should run. We later found out that there had been similar sightings on that road by workers at Fort Pickett, a military facility nearby. This happened when I was in 9th or 10th grade. I lived in a pretty basic suburban neighborhood. My friends and I would usually just hang out at one of our houses and watch a movie or something. When we got older, we were always looking for more exciting things to do. There was this house in the old part of our neighborhood. It was right near the downtown area, if you could even call it that. It was really just the only street in the area that had any businesses on it. The rest was all residential. The house was in absolute disrepair. The windows were boarded up and it looked like the roof was caving in. I had walked past it pretty much every day of my life because it was on the way home from the primary school that I used to go to. One Friday night, my friends and I were walking around trying to decide what to do. There were 4 of us. It was me, Chris, Brent and Devin. My friend Chris suggested that we check out the old house. The rest of us agreed, so we walked there. It was only 5 or 10 minutes away. It was dark when we got there, but the streetlights were bright. They illuminated the outside of the place with a really eerie glow. This house really did belong in a horror movie. In fact, we all called it the haunted house. Even though nobody ever had any ghost encounters there, it just looked the part. There was a large sign on the front door that said no trespassing, as well as some other safety warnings from the city. We ignored it and walked around to the back. That's when we saw that there was a window where the boards were ripped off. I figured we weren't the first kids to get curious. Chris climbed in first, and then the rest of us followed. When we were inside, I pulled up my phone and turned on the flashlight. One of the other guys did the same, although I can't remember which. We then realized that we were in the kitchen. As expected, it was an absolute mess, but not quite in the way that we thought. It was pretty much stripped bare. Apart from a broken fridge in the corner of the room, all the other appliances were gone, including the sink. I guess they salvaged what they could before boarding the place up. After we looked around for a minute or two, we started exploring. When we made it into the living room, we noticed that there was no furniture, but there were signs that someone else had been there. The place must have been filled with at least 200 empty beer cans and bottles. Not a surprise at all. We figured it was a popular place for teenagers to hang out at some point. I don't remember when Chris disappeared. "Hey, where's Chris?" Devin said no idea. "He must be around here somewhere." Brent said not more than a minute later, we heard an ear-piercing scream. It seemed to come from upstairs, and I was sure that it was Chris. The three of us followed the sound and quickly scurried up the old wooden stairs. We burst into the first bedroom, and what we saw almost gave me a heart attack. In the corner of the room, we saw Chris and another man holding a knife to his throat. The man was around 6 feet, tall and thin. He had thin black hair and skin that resembled leather. If I had to guess, I'd say he was a drug addict. He was rambling, incoherently, and honestly, I have no idea what he was saying. I tried to calm him down by just repeating it. "Okay, we'll leave." Chris was pretty much losing his mind. Tears were flowing down his cheeks, and he was shaking. Suddenly, the man released him, and we all booked it out of there. We ran down the stairs and climbed out the window the way we came. Once we made it out to the street, we decided not to tell anyone because we were worried about getting in trouble. Looking back, I know we should have told because that guy could be dangerous. One time, me and my 2 cousins, one male and one female, and also another friend of mine, went to a big piece of land. It was filled with foliage, and there was a hill which was called the Big Hill. To the locals down below, it was private property, but we didn't care. It was starting to get dark when we got there. We walked around for a while, and eventually we stumbled upon a small abandoned house. There were 2 shed-like structures next to it. We wanted to explore them, but my female cousin was not having it. She went home, but we stayed to explore. I agreed to text her every 3 to 5 minutes so she would know that we were safe. When we approached the house, it was basically pitch black outside. My friend and my cousin both had flashlights, and I had my phone for light. I sent a constant stream of info and pictures to my cousin as we agreed. Everything went normally for a while. We were goofing off and scaring each other, but then we stumbled into the garage. It had a hole in the ceiling to the attic. We then left the garage and discussed whether we should try to get footage of the inside. I offered to do it, but my cousin would have to boost me since he was the only one who was tall enough. I was down for it, but my friend said that I was nuts and we should leave. We argued for a solid minute or so, and suddenly we heard a slam in the garage. And I don't mean the simple bump. It was a solid slam. We all booked it instantly. While we were running, my friend tripped me by mistake. I looked behind me while I was pulling myself up, and I saw what looked like a man peeking through the doorway behind the garage. I only saw him for a split second, but I got up and ran with my friend and my cousin. We had to go back down the hill to get back and top the fence. I was the last one to reach the fence, and when we got over, I texted my cousin to tell her what happened. My grammar was terrible due to my intense fear and shakiness. She told me to get home immediately. We did, and that was that. but it still haunts me, and I always wondered what would have happened if we didn't exit that garage. We may not be here today,